take teenagers, let's say at age 13, in the early teens, in 1975, our first national survey, we found that just over 60% of 13-year-olds were hit by their parents that year, as reported by the parents. It's actually higher, but this is what the parents told us about. By 1995, 20 years later, that had gone down to 30%. That's cut in half. Now, 30% is still a lot. This is one of those, is the glass half full or half empty? And of course, it's both. 30% hitting a 13 or 14-year-old is very high, but it's a lot better than 60%. And it's especially a lot better in view of the fact that hitting kids at that age is likely to be have the most severe effect on what their later behavior is likely to be. Unfortunately, we don't really know that for sure. This is an issue that needs research. What we do know is that it's kids who are hit at that age who are most likely to get in trouble, to be violent, to do all kinds of other things. But the presently available research doesn't let you tease out whether that's because they were hit when they were teenagers or whether it's because they've been hit since they were infants. Is it the 14 years, the 13, 14 years of being hit, or is it being hit at age 13 or 14? We don't yet know that, and it may be both.
I think that when we talk about corporal punishment or violence towards children, there's a mindset that has envisioned a child, say, from 2 to 8 years of age, maybe from 2 to 6 years of age, and then, well, you don't have to do it when they're older than that. I think our biggest surprise in the research we've done in 25 years was that half of the parents of 18-year-olds are still hitting the 18-year-olds, and these 18-year-olds were college students. So, huh? I mean, the last year you were in high school, your parent hit you? For what? Well, mostly mouthing off. Mostly, 18-year-olds have a tendency to go for the jugular with their voice or words, or getting something pierced the parent didn't want to have pierced. So it's a myth that parents stop or dramatically decrease the use of corporal punishment towards their kids. Now, with a combination of a number of factors, using severe corporal punishment against a teenager has many, many negative consequences. Clearly, a lot of the sexual problems that adolescent girls have arise out of sexual abuse in the family combined with physical violence that's experienced upon them when they're teenagers. Teenage runaways tend to be running away from violence, tend to be running away from domestic violence. They're not running away because they're horrible, terrible, awful kids. They're running away from horrible, terrible, awful conditions. Juvenile delinquents are acting out, seeking approval, seeking self-concept because they're not getting it at home. They're being told how dumb and stupid and ugly they are, and they're getting hit to boot. When you feel bad about yourself, that's one of the best predictors of using violence towards anyone else. And being hit and being yelled at when you're an adolescent, when you're trying to form your identity, is a very critical component to the onset of juvenile violent behavior.
How about adolescents? What do we know about adolescents? What we know is that adolescents who are being hit, who have been hit, even 1 or 2 times, have higher rates of depression, abuse of alcohol, and a sense of alienation, powerlessness, and normlessness. They're less likely to subscribe to societal standards. They've kind of written people off. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because by school age and adolescence, the child clearly identifies with parents and says, I'm going to be like this. And then they have that kind of painful experience and that disrespectful experience, so that it lowers their own self-esteem, and they kind of write the parents off in terms of subscribing to some of the standards that the parent might espouse. So if you want to make sure that your kid doesn't grow up like you, hitting them is a good way to get started, so that they will move away from your own standards. So there are long-term effects that are correlational effects, but clearly there. And the effect of corporal punishment seems to be present even with very rare episodes of corporal punishment. So I said 1 to 2 episodes of corporal punishment in the last year for adolescents. But in fact, we know that 25% of adolescents are receiving, on average, girls, 5 corporal episodes per year, for boys, 7. And 84% of parents admitted to having hit their child at least once within the last year, and these are adolescents. So one of the problems with corporal punishment is people don't stop using it at a time when the detrimental effects are clearly there.
I said, well, you just told me you don't like to be hit, yet you know your parents are going to hit you when you do these things. What's going on? And this kid was really bright. He said, I want to make a point. And the point is, there's nothing they can do to punish me. I'm going to do it anyway. And of course, this kid, several years later, got old enough and big enough that he took a baseball bat to his father when the father threatened to hit him, and that was the end of it. The father didn't hit him after that. But the kid learned violence, and I'm sure he'll do some of the same things, although I hope in therapy he's learned it's a bad idea. So as kids get older, what we do is we use withdrawal of privilege. And I tell lots of parents when the kids get old enough to use the car, especially kids who are really out of control, you've got something you can control the kid with, the car. You don't have to lose your temper. Just say, if you don't do your chores, you don't get the car tonight. And make sure they can't get the car. Make sure they have no key to get it, it's locked, and so forth. But make sure you can follow through. Cars are a potent tool for using as a withdrawal of privilege to get teenagers to behave.